Hey guys! Today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started.
A loud argument breaks out in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of town. The neighbors are used to raised voices from that house, but tonight feels different, more intense. Within minutes, a call comes in to emergency services. The voice on the line is shaky, scattered, like the caller can't gather their thoughts. Dispatch has no idea they're sending officers into what will soon become a tragedy that captures the attention of the entire country. Dubuque, a city stretched along the banks of the Mississippi River, initially comes off as a classic Midwestern industrial town, with rolling hills, historic districts, and a picturesque charm. But beneath that surface lies a complex history that has shaped the city in ways not immediately visible. For decades, Dubuque was known as a stronghold of a notorious hate group with deep roots in the region. In the 1920s, this group was highly influential, organizing public rallies, pressuring local officials, and attracting open support from many white residents. This troubling legacy left a mark on how the city was structured. Entire neighborhoods were effectively divided along racial lines. African American families were restricted to specific parts of town, and for years, local schools and job opportunities remained largely inaccessible to minorities. Even into the late 20th century, federal reports listed Dubuque as one of the least welcoming places in the nation for Black Americans. During the 1980s and 1990s, tensions flared again. Threatening graffiti began appearing, homes were targeted with arson, and the city government was forced to roll out anti-discrimination programs. Still, into the 21st century, incidents of hostility continued, from street-level aggression to inflammatory posts online. So the contrast between Dubuque's postcard perfect image and its deeper social struggles has always been apparent. On one side, historic churches, a respected university, and breathtaking views of the Mississippi. On the other, a legacy of racial intolerance, social friction, and long-standing mistrust between communities. It was in this atmosphere of prejudice and unspoken conflict that a story unfolded, one that would soon draw national attention. Fonte Buelo grew up in Dubuque in a well-regarded family, and was known from a young age for his love of sports and natural social charisma. His confidence, easygoing nature, and charm made him a natural leader, popular among peers throughout both high school and college. Samantha Link's story was different. Raised in a household that valued hard work and structure, she took to athletics early on, pushing herself to prove her strength and determination. In her teens, she was diagnosed with mental health conditions that required ongoing medical supervision and daily medication. While the treatments helped her maintain balance, they also caused mood swings and occasional irritability. She had also endured difficult past relationships where she had experienced control and emotional pressure. That history left deep emotional scars, fear of losing control, and a constant need for reassurance in her relationships. Outwardly, though, Samantha came across as energetic and driven, someone with clear goals and the willpower to chase them. They first met at a party hosted by their mutual friend, Cassie. The night was filled with music and laughter, a seemingly ordinary gathering that turned into a pivotal moment for both of them. Fonte was in his element, cracking jokes and drawing people in with his charm. Samantha watched him with a mix of caution and curiosity. When they finally spoke, it quickly became clear they shared similar interests and values. To the rest of the guests, it was obvious. Something was sparking between them. Within days, casual texts and evening walks turned into something more serious. Not long after, they decided to move in together. Their friends were taken aback by how fast things progressed. It was like they skipped the usual getting-to-know-you phase and dove headfirst into a full-on relationship. Living under the same roof, their differences quickly became apparent. Samantha craved stability and a calm home environment where her emotional well-being would be acknowledged. Fonte, meanwhile, stuck to his familiar lifestyle, late nights, parties, and time with friends. What felt like neglect to her seemed completely normal to him. At first, those differences were seen as complementary, opposites that balanced each other out. But over time, the contrast between their needs began to wear on the relationship. Their opposing views on what a partnership should look like slowly started chipping away at the bond they had formed. To most people, they still appeared to be a picture-perfect couple. He was the charismatic figure everyone noticed, and she was the quiet, grounding presence by his side. But those who knew them well began noticing early red flags. Samantha became increasingly uneasy about how open Fonte was with others, especially with women. He, on the other hand, didn't see a problem with being friendly. He'd brush off her concerns or try to laugh them away, which only deepened her sense of distrust. On the surface, their relationship still seemed solid. They talked about future plans, supported each other during tough times, and made an effort to stay close. But beneath it all, tension was building. For Samantha, being with Fonte represented a chance at a fresh start and a steady partner she could rely on. For Fonte, it was more about the excitement, the attention, the connection. Their mismatched intentions slowly became more noticeable to the people around them. Over time, the pressure began to show. Samantha's life was tied closely to her medication schedule and regular medical checkups. Predictability was crucial for her. Any disruption in routine felt like a threat to her sense of control. But Fonte didn't always take this seriously. He believed his role was to be there during the tough moments, but not necessarily to structure his life around her needs. Minor frustrations began to pile up: his tardiness, forgotten promises, casual acceptance of party invites even when she wasn't feeling well. Her reactions often came across as intense criticisms, which he saw as overly dramatic. She brought up their future more frequently, hoping for reassurance, but he avoided specifics. Her anxiety grew, and so did his irritation. Still, the connection between them remained strong. This push and pull, deep attachment mixed with rising frustration, gradually became the defining pattern of their relationship. After another heated argument, Samantha left to stay with her mother, hoping to clear her mind and get some distance from Fonte. Eventually, though, they agreed to return home together. The drive back was marked by a heavy silence, interrupted only by brief bursts of mutual blame. Tension filled the car. Neither was willing to be the first to back down. For Fonte, this return felt like a turning point. He was beginning to see more clearly that their relationship might have reached a dead end. Samantha, on the other hand, didn't hide her frustration and kept pressing him, escalating the conversation. Being back in the house didn't bring them any relief. Within hours, a new wave of arguments had begun. Samantha insisted that Fonte show more care and commitment, demanding reassurance that he was truly invested in a long-term relationship and not just staying out of convenience. Fonte responded with cold detachment, saying her expectations were too much and that he felt stifled by her demands. Soon after, he made the decision to end the relationship, seeing it as the only way to escape the constant emotional pressure. He said so openly, explaining that he no longer saw a future for them. For Samantha, the breakup felt like a devastating blow. She had built her sense of stability around the relationship and wasn't prepared to let it go. Amid this emotional turbulence, a new element emerged. A video posted by Fonte. In it, he spoke directly to his audience, making remarks that could easily be interpreted as personal jabs tied to their ongoing issues. The move came across as dismissive, almost as if he was using the platform to vent his frustration with Samantha in a very public way. For her, It was a clear signal that he was no longer interested in working things out. What had been emotional strain soon spilled over into a physical confrontation. A heated exchange escalated beyond words. During the dispute, Fonte reportedly told Samantha he wanted her out of the house, that her presence had become unbearable. It wasn't just said in anger. It was a firm declaration that he no longer wanted to share a living space with her. That moment marked the critical tipping point in their relationship. The video seemed to accelerate what followed at the home they once shared. Later, Fonte claimed that in the aftermath of the argument, Samantha, overwhelmed and in an emotionally unstable state, impulsively grabbed a kitchen knife and inflicted injuries on herself. According to his version, her actions were a form of self-harm. He denied any involvement, telling police that he had tried to stop her, but couldn't. However, the scene that first responders encountered painted a much more complicated picture. Paramedics arrived to find Samantha lifeless on the kitchen floor with 3 stab wounds to vital areas. The positioning of the body and the nature of the wounds didn't quite match the story Fonte had told. While medics attempted life-saving measures, officers kept a close watch on Fonte's behavior. What they observed stood out. Not shock, not concern, but clear signs of irritation and hostility. Witnesses said he shouted at law enforcement, argued with them, and acted in an aggressive and confrontational manner. For the officers on scene, this behavior was a strong indicator that this wasn't just a domestic dispute. Something far more serious was unfolding. After Fontebuelo was taken into custody, investigators immediately noticed inconsistencies in his statements. Detectives pressed for details, the exact timing of the incident, where he was at that moment, and what steps he took. His answers were vague, occasionally changing, which raised red flags with the officers handling the case. One of the key pieces of evidence quickly became his phone. A recording captured on the device revealed a tense atmosphere and an aggressive tone from Fonte, including threats directed at Samantha. Officers also noted how emotionally charged he appeared in the footage, a stark contrast to his claim that he had calmly tried to stop her. This discrepancy between the video evidence and his version of events only deepened suspicions. In addition, text messages found on his phone revealed ongoing arguments and mutual accusations in the days leading up to the incident. These exchanges painted a picture of a relationship in turmoil, making it clear that what happened wasn't a sudden outburst. It was the climax of a long-standing conflict. Within hours of launching the investigation, the police had a crucial piece of evidence: the video from Fonte's phone. It directly contradicted his version of events, weakening his credibility and laying the groundwork for a potential case against him. Medical examiners later noted that the injuries sustained by Samantha Link were more consistent with a physical struggle. They emphasized that the nature and placement of the wounds were not in line with claims of self-harm. The likelihood of someone inflicting those injuries on themselves in such a short time frame was deemed extremely low. These expert conclusions delivered a significant blow to Fonte's account. Investigators also obtained security footage from neighboring homes, as well as statements from witnesses. Neighbors reported hearing loud screams that night. Every new piece of evidence further contradicted the scenario Fonte had described. To detectives, it became increasingly clear that he was hiding the full truth. His story began to look less like a genuine explanation and more like a hastily assembled defense. Samantha Link's family voiced their doubts from the start. They were aware of the problems in the relationship and insisted that Samantha had never shown signs of wanting to harm herself. Her mother told investigators that Samantha had future plans and had never exhibited behavior suggesting emotional instability. Her testimony stood in direct opposition to Fonte's attempt to portray Samantha as overwhelmed and impulsive. Public reaction was swift. Local news outlets began reporting details of the case, sparking widespread discussion in the community. On social media, a consensus began to form. Many believed that Bialo was trying to deflect responsibility. The response from the public and Samantha's family became a crucial aspect of the investigation. Detectives understood that public sentiment and the victim's support network could influence how the case would be presented and perceived in court. What began as a personal dispute quickly escalated into a major criminal case that captured public attention. As the story unfolded, it drew strong reactions. The community demanded justice, and Samantha Link's family pushed for a full and unbiased investigation. A series of comprehensive forensic examinations were ordered to establish the facts surrounding the tragic incident. Medical experts closely analyzed the nature of the wounds sustained by Samantha Link. Their findings revealed that the injuries were inflicted with varying force, from different angles and in multiple directions. They also noted the absence of marks typically associated with defensive actions or self-inflicted harm. A psychological evaluation showed no evidence that Samantha suffered from any severe mental health conditions. The case file confirmed she had never been formally diagnosed with a disorder that could explain the behavior being suggested. She was not under observation by mental health professionals, and there was no documented history pointing to emotional instability. The results of these evaluations became a turning point in the investigation. In addition to video footage and witness testimony, the case now had solid expert findings. The unanimous conclusion, the theory that Samantha had harmed herself, was not credible. These findings became the foundation of the prosecution's case, significantly strengthening their position and moving the case closer to trial. The trial of Fontainebleau took place in Rockwall County, Texas, a small, conservative town where such cases often draw swift public interest. The courtroom was packed. Locals, journalists, and concerned citizens filled every available seat, eager to witness the proceedings firsthand. Presiding over the trial was Judge George Ashford, known for his strict and direct approach. However, his decision to limit discussion about Samantha Link's mental health raised concerns. He ruled out any mention of her visits to psychologists, which many believed prevented the jury from gaining a complete picture of her state of mind. This restriction became a major point of contention, shaping the way the case unfolded. The prosecution focused heavily on medical evidence. Bruising and marks on Samantha's arms and shoulders were inconsistent with the idea of self-harm. Crime scene photos showing disarray and blood patterns pointed to a physical altercation rather than a voluntary act. Fonte's defense team tried to pivot the narrative. They claimed he acted in self-defense after an unexpected emotional outburst from Samantha. They highlighted her text messages and described her as highly emotional, but their arguments were repeatedly challenged by witness testimony. Samantha's close friends gave consistent statements. She was making plans for the near future, talking about a new job opportunity and an upcoming trip, details that undercut the theory that she was emotionally unstable or in crisis. A pivotal moment came when an audio recording was played in court. In it, Fonte can be heard saying, "Don't get dumb." The prosecution presented this as an expression of frustration and a possible precursor to the events that followed. The defense insisted it was just a casual argument, taken out of context. However, both the jury and the public seemed to interpret the recording as part of a larger pattern of tension and conflict. Fontainebleau's own behavior during the trial also drew attention. He frequently changed details in his statements, struggled with timelines, and often avoided giving direct answers. The court noted his lack of consistency, which only deepened skepticism about the credibility of his defense. As the trial progressed, the picture being painted grew increasingly unfavorable for Fontainebleau. The prosecution presented a case that appeared consistent and grounded in hard evidence, while the defense's arguments began to feel strained and incomplete. Attention soon turned to the jury. Behind closed doors, their deliberations became tense, marked by sharp disagreements. Some jurors expressed doubts about Fonte's guilt, while others pushed for the maximum penalty. Tensions ran high, and reports of external pressure even surfaced. A letter written by juror Andrew emerged as a key point of contention. In it, he admitted to feeling pressured, both by the judge and by more forceful fellow jurors. While the letter would later be used in an appeal, during the trial it added to the already uneasy atmosphere in the courtroom. Judge Ashford, rather than maintaining neutrality, took an authoritative stance. He openly urged the jury to reach a unified decision, essentially nudging them toward a compromise. At multiple points, he interrupted Fonte's attorneys, limited their lines of questioning, and excluded evidence that could have worked in the defendant's favor. Journalists covering the case noted that the judge's conduct created a clear imbalance in the proceedings. Outside the courtroom, public pressure intensified. Samantha's family spoke regularly with the press, portraying her as a victim and Fonte as the aggressor. Local newspapers ran emotional pieces about her final days, including interviews with friends and loved ones. Despite court instructions to avoid media coverage, some of this content still made its way to the jurors. A turning point came when additional messages from Samantha's personal conversations were introduced. These messages showed her desire to end the relationship and move on with her life. For the prosecution, it was a decisive blow to the defense's narrative. At this stage, it was clear. The defense had little ground left to stand on. The jury was no longer weighing competing versions of events. They were already considering the severity of the punishment. Internal pressure within the jury room and the judge's firm stance had shifted the momentum firmly toward the prosecution. After weeks of emotional testimony and legal argument, the courtroom braced for the final decision. The jury returned with a verdict that would bring the high-profile trial to a close. The judge read it aloud. Fonte Buello was found guilty of the crime involving Samantha Link and was sentenced to 50 years in prison. A heavy silence filled the room, followed by a wave of mixed reactions. Fonte didn't outwardly panic upon hearing the sentence, but the strain on his face was unmistakable. He had denied responsibility throughout the trial, and even in the face of the final ruling, he continued to maintain his innocence. His first response was to announce plans to appeal the decision, claiming that the evidence had been misinterpreted and that the full context of that night had not been fairly considered. Samantha Link's family received the verdict with visible relief. For them, it marked the restoration of justice, though it came at the cost of a loss that could never be undone. Loved ones in the courtroom shed tears openly. Some spoke words of gratitude to the prosecutors and the court, acknowledging a long-awaited sense of closure. Public response to the verdict was sharply divided. Some saw it as a fair and well-earned conclusion to a difficult investigation, while others questioned whether the trial had been fully impartial. Supporters of Fonte, including those closest to him, argued that the investigation had been biased from the beginning. At the same time, many believed Buello was responsible and viewed him as a calculated offender who deserved the sentence handed down. One of the more contentious points was the removal of a juror, which Fonte's supporters claimed had compromised the integrity of the proceedings and warranted a full retrial. Following the announcement of the sentence, the division in public opinion became even more pronounced, and local media captured this divide. Some individuals, observing Fonte's demeanor throughout the trial, formed advocacy groups demanding a review of the case. Others, citing the prosecution's argument and what they viewed as irrefutable evidence, believed the matter was settled. Far from ending the controversy, the verdict intensified the debate. To some, Fonte Buello became a symbol of cold-blooded wrongdoing. To others, he represented someone possibly crushed by a system that rushed to judgment. Immediately after sentencing, Buelo's legal team began preparing an appeal. His attorneys argued that the investigation had been riddled with procedural missteps, and that key evidence presented in court had been interpreted in a way that unfairly favored the prosecution. In interviews and public statements, Fonte insisted that authorities had treated him as the prime suspect from the outset and refused to consider any alternative explanations. His legal team also challenged the use of video footage recorded inside the home before the incident. They claimed snippets of conversation had been taken out of context, which could have skewed the jury's perception. The appeals court agreed to review the materials, but the process was expected to take time. During this period, Fonte remained in custody, while his supporters launched a public campaign calling for a retrial. Critics of the movement, however, viewed the effort as an attempt to prolong a case that had already been resolved with overwhelming evidence. Thus, the case entered a new phase. Even after sentencing, it continued to divide public opinion and spark intense discussion about the circumstances surrounding Fonte Buelo. As preparations for the appeal moved forward, independent experts began to play a more prominent role. Fonte's defense brought in specialists in forensic psychology and criminal investigation to support his version of events. One expert argued that the nature of the wounds on Samantha Link could, under certain emotional conditions, be consistent with self-inflicted harm. Another pointed out the lack of direct eyewitnesses to the altercation at the moment it occurred. The prosecution countered with its own set of expert analyses. They highlighted forensic data, the direction of blood spatter, and the position of the body in the kitchen as strong indicators that the injuries were inflicted by another person. At the same time, public discussions began to focus more deeply on the personal lives of Fonte Buelo and Samantha Link. Media outlets dug into old social media posts, comments from friends and colleagues, and pieces of the couple's history that hadn't been widely known. Some statements indicated that Samantha had, on multiple occasions, voiced concerns about Fonte's harsh behavior. Others suggested she herself could be impulsive and prone to emotional outbursts. Even among experts, opinions were split. Some specialists argued that the case relied too heavily on circumstantial evidence, while others believed the collected facts were more than enough to support a guilty verdict. The debate extended far beyond the courtroom, becoming a subject for talk shows, editorials, and online commentary. The case of Buelo and Link quickly evolved into more than just a legal matter. It became a public arena reflecting deeper disagreements within the professional community. Each new analysis, statement, or leaked detail only added fuel to the fire, drawing even more public interest and widening the divide in how the case was perceived. Even after the sentencing and the start of the appeals process, the story remained in the spotlight. Investigative journalists published follow-up pieces, revealing new angles and previously unreported details. Some articles touched on financial aspects, including disputes over Samantha's estate and claims made by her family. Social media played a major role, with support groups forming on both sides. Some users rallied around Fonte, convinced that a miscarriage of justice had taken place. Others defended the verdict, viewing it as a necessary step toward accountability. By this stage, the story had fully transformed into a symbol of public conflict between those who believed the justice system had erred and those who felt it had done its job. It became etched in public memory not just as a high-profile courtroom battle, but as one of the most polarizing and talked-about legal sagas of its time, leaving a lasting mark not only in legal archives, but in cultural discourse as well.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.